have been designated the MC of this event this evening. We are going to hear now from Dr. Michael Ben-Eli. Carmelo León will introduce him from the University of Las Palmas, and he will be talking about sustainability as a global challenge. Carmelo, please take the floor.
Bueno, para mí un placer, un honor presentar al doctor Michael Ben-Eli.
It's an honor to be able to introduce Michael Ben-Eli. He is a doctor in cybernetics, architect, urbanist, designer. He is a noteworthy figure who has worked a great deal in creative ideas for sustainability. He put forward a very original concept of sustainability based on 5 transdisciplinary pillars. This reflects the relationships between our natural and human worlds. He is innovative and focused on offering practical solutions for the challenges that human beings face. He has managed to apply his theory to the real world, creating the Sustainability Lab, which he directs. This is a charity that is committed to working on sustainability from a local to a global process. He also works in education. He leads a program to educate the general public. His last event actually took place following the La Palma volcanic eruptions. His success in his projects are exemplary and offer an example for solutions that the human beings of this planet will face in the future increasingly. He is able to offer solutions that will work at a global level. He has a very, very wide-ranging trajectory. He's worked with Fuller, one of the leaders in his field. His contribution has been absolutely key in promoting, as I say, global scale solutions starting from a local level. He will hopefully, I'm sure, share some of these examples with us. Thank you very much, Dr. Ben-Eli, for participating in this conference, and I give you the floor.
Buenas tardes, todas y todos. Disculpa mucho que mi español no es bastante bien, so voy a hablar en inglés.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize as my Spanish isn't quite up to par, so I will continue now in English.
What I thought I'll do today is try to combine a few things. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Sustainability Laboratory itself, what we do and how we do it. I want to really sharpen a little bit the concept of sustainability itself, and I'd like to then talk about some of our experiences with the Canaries in the last few years, and of course what we feel very strongly it all means for this magnificent place, the Canary Islands. So the lab was established in 2008 as a not-for-profit research, development, and education organization. And basically, the idea behind the lab, why the lab, was very simple, that the kind of challenges that humanity is facing in the transition to a more sustainable way of doing things are entirely unprecedented. Nobody has the experience of how to manage up to 10 billion people on the planet in a more or less harmonious peaceful and abundant way. There's no cookbook that tells us what to do, and if there's no cookbook, there's no recipe, you have to experiment. And where do you experiment? You experiment in a lab. And what does the planet need now? A global laboratory for sustainability innovations. And nobody was doing it. Remember, this was 2008. Why not do it? So it was a very naive, kind of Don Quixotic, perhaps I like to say, venture, but we jumped into it and did a few things over the years. The basic mission of the lab is what we are trying to do is to advance the sustainability agenda through research and development project and education, as I mentioned, basically expanding prospects and producing positive life-affirming impacts on people and ecosystems in all parts of the world. And in order to drive the work of the lab, we developed what we look to as our signature approach, if you like, that combines three important elements. The first is a system-oriented design approach. We like to take a holistic view of issues and understand those issues by understanding what are the key components in those issues and how they interact, because that actually gives you the handle over what are the points that you can push in order to bring about a change. I'm saying design here because that's a very important thing. Usually we tend to focus on problems. When you focus on a problem, you become a prisoner of its epistemology. It's very difficult to get out of it. The design approach asks you to project a vision, an end state. What is it that you want to achieve, regardless of any circumstances? And then walk back to see what is needed to be put together in order to get you to that situation. And this, I'm sorry, I jumped too quickly. The other part of that conceptual framework, if you like, is a modern innovative theory of change that we'll talk to a little later, that basically makes a distinction between changes you can make in the system while the system still stays the same, or changes that bring about the complete transformation, that system shifts, it evolves into something else. And then, of course, the definition, our own definition of sustainability and the sustainability principles that is basically the framework to all the project that we do. And that complete conceptual, if you like, framework is behind everything that we do, both development projects and educational programs in all parts of the world. And what we are trying to achieve is really second order, a really profound transformation, not tinker at the margin. And this symbolizes that transformation for me, if you like, because you see the duck swimming, and we'll meet him at the end. The duck swimming in this pool of water here is swimming in a place that only 10 years ago looked like the picture on the right, and today it looks like the picture on the top. Basically, the lab is designed to deal with four basic areas: developing projects, technology innovations that are demonstrated in this project, educational programs, and now we are getting into putting together some very interesting capacity to deal with I came here, green technology, green economics, how to develop financial instruments that recognize the externalities that are usually left out from conventional economic computation. Some of the project, this is a project, I'll run through this very quickly, not getting into the details. This is a project in the Negev desert in Israel with the Bedouin community, where it developed basically a model for agricultural, sustainable agriculture in desert environment. We're working in Costa Rica with a group of immigrants from, illegal immigrants from Nicaragua, basically trying to develop a model how to deal with migrant communities of this kind that are becoming a big issue in Costa Rica and many other parts in the world. A very interesting project in Arizona, trying to bring biological remediation to toxic tilling left out of abandoned gold mines, trying to scale up an ecosystem restoration in Kenya with the Maasai community. Incidentally, the last two projects are now with a big question mark with all the recent crazy development in the USA. And of course, we have some educational program. This is a sustainability prize program that is given to graduate projects in both Earth University in Costa Rica, and now we started the same project in Bhutan as well. Last but not least, the Global Sustainability Fellows program that you are familiar with more because we had experiences here in the Canary. I talked about developing projects, so the idea is to develop over time a portfolio of showcase projects that demonstrate the approach that I talked about earlier. And the other idea is to actually develop the lab as a network of activity centers around the world that map onto particular ecozones. So with the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, we started to deal with, this is going 17 years now, started to deal with issues of drylands and desert, with Earth University in Costa Rica to deal with dry and humid tropics. In Bhutan now, and relatively new, to deal with issues of alpine sustainability issues in alpine ecologies. And of course, with the Canaries, we started this relationship with the University of Las Palmas to deal with issues of island ecologies. I had to put this one in after all the work, all these years. Only 3-4 days ago, the lab was inducted into the International Green Industry Hall of Fame in a great ceremony that took part in California. That was just last weekend, pretty much. I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of sustainability. As you all must be aware of, the concept has been so much overused and abused and disused that it's almost lost its meaning. You can't say anything today without also putting sustainability in it. Even the prevailing formal definition of sustainable development, as development that takes care of current need without jeopardizing the needs of future generation, is not really very helpful. It sounds very sensible and very obvious, but when you look at it a little closer, it's very difficult to, for example, to compute economic utility values for future generations. Future generations are not with us to discuss what's good for them, and there are some other weaknesses, but it's a typical UN thing. Nobody will say I'm against future generations, so you look for the lowest common denominator that all 190 nations in the big conference in Rio in 1992 can agree on, and that's basically what happened there. So it was very important for us to really redefine that concept and give it a little bit more rigor. Now, when you take a system view of thing, there are two things that are very important to understand. What are the key variables that are the component of the system that you're talking about, and how they interact? In the context of sustainability, there are two absolutely key variables without which you cannot really talk about sustainability. One is population, and the other is the carrying capacity of its environment. Population and carrying capacity. Can be any population, any environment. Can be amoeba in a petri dish, or animals in the savannah, wildebeest in the savannah, or humans on the planet. Doesn't really matter. The important thing is to understand that this interaction of those two components are not a linear interaction. It's a circular interaction in a circle in which the two really define one another. Incidentally, that circle is the key structural element of the concept of sustainability. You're all familiar with the term. Everybody's talking about the circular economy and so forth, although many times this is used for recycling. It's much more profound like that, and you have to achieve a balance in that particular interaction. If you look at this at a higher resolution level, you have a population. The population issue in itself is quite complex in its own right, and not all of it is completely understood, but the point is that the environment has an impact on the conflict, not just impact, but defines what kind of population is possible in the first place. And a population impacts the carrying capacity through its activity. And if you look at it, there are really two major channels that are involved there. One is the channel of demands of resources. We are basically consuming the environment, if you like. And the other is the channel of generating byproduct. Any activity generate byproducts, whether it's emission or heat or whatever, and those byproducts have to be absorbed by the environment that supports that thing. So looking at that kind of a concept, systemic concept, the way we define sustainability is as follows. Dynamic equilibrium, it's not a static point that you get once and for all and you stay there. It's a dynamic equilibrium in the process of interaction between a population and the carrying capacity of its environment. You don't say such that the population can develop to its full capacity. You don't put any conditions as other than one without adversely and irreversibly impacting the carrying capacity upon which it depends. So you see, two things are important about this definition. One, each one of the variables in it is actually measurable. The other was it mimics the logic of the circularity, which is very important to emphasize. So we are currently obviously totally out of balance. We are out of balance because of the fact that we consume resources faster than the Earth can regenerate them, and we are overwhelming the sink with byproduct in quantities that are higher than the sinks can actually absorb. And so when you look at this, why are we out of balance? There are really two factors that are important. One is the huge population increase in the last 300 years. If you look at it, you realize that throughout history, going back 10, 15,000 years, humanity rarely even came close to 1 billion. And then suddenly in the last 300 years, we jumped from just about 1 billion to the 8 that we are now. Now, this is very important. Although around the world, many demographers are talking about the fact that many countries are losing population now and things are changing. But basically, what they are talking about is the tip of the angle of the tip of that big jump, whether it's steep or not. The point is that the change is the whole relationship between humanity and the planet has already changed. And it changed by this big jump. It's a completely different reality that we never experienced before. Why is it so important? Because most of the mechanisms that are in place to deal with governance, economic definition, everything that you want, are all Neanderthal. They are all instruments, tools that have evolved in a completely different reality. And we have not catched up yet with what the new reality is needed in those terms. And of course, not only the number of activity, but the huge intensification that continues every day. Intensification in human activities, more flights, more running around, more people, more consumption, more everything. And I use this example as a visual indication of that enormous intensity of activity. You are familiar with those slide satellites at night. This is over Europe. If you took that picture 200 years ago, it will be dark. And here you see the intensity of what is going on in that area. And even worse, when you think about it, still today, a very large portion of that energy that is translated into light here is produced by fossil fuels. So this is basically a picture of how we are burning the planet. I'm saying it laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. And we are out of equilibrium, I said, because we are consuming beyond the capacity of, for example, logging. You're familiar with all the logging stuff that is happening all the world way faster than the forest can recover itself. The same with fisheries that are collapsing everywhere. And in the other hand of things, these are things that you are familiar with. The other side, we are still emitting way beyond the capacity to absorb, and all this junk everywhere around the world is not helping either. Now, there's a lot of activities, a lot of talks, a lot of efforts, a lot of everything, but what you want to really realize is that the big engines are still keeping not only keeping that conditions in place, that disequilibrium, but actually intensifying it as we go along. So what happens? The system, the biosphere, the planet is under stress. And being under stress, it shows all kinds of all kinds of ways of disease, if you like. A lot of things that we call environmental problems are not environmental problems, they are deep symptoms of the earth telling us that we are doing something wrong, and this is manifest in ozone depletion, climate change, the loss of biodiversity, the soil erosion and desertification, the pressure on water resources, shrinking of forest covers, and of course the huge income disparities within nations and between nations. All of those are creating a lot of manifestations of stress, whether it's more storms, more droughts, more fires, more wars, more whatever. All of those are a result, I think, of the pressure that biosphere as a whole, including us in it, are feeling. So going back to that, thing in a minute, we talked about consumption of resources and absorption of byproducts. These are physical conditions. This is basically the metabolic interaction with the planet. But there are many non-physical aspects that are part of this activity vectors that influence that equilibrium. And those factors, of course, include a population size, the volume and intensity of its activity, we mentioned that, but also the composition of the environment, but also a lot of non-physical aspects that are the prevailing culture and view of the world, the basically available technology, the political and economic system that are employed, the organization, how society organizes itself, and all of those are factors that influence at the end that equilibrium that I was talking about. And so when you write down all those millions of components of each one of those factors, I found it kind of convenient to cluster them in 5 main domains. The material domain, that basically provides the basis for regulating the flow of material and energy that underlies the economy. The economic domains, that provides a guiding framework for defining, managing, and creating wealth. What do we call wealth? Is it dollars in the bank, or is it well-being of an ecosystem? The domain of life, you realize I don't use the term environment here because I think that term accentuates the problem that we have. We say we are here and the environment are there, and therefore we can do to the environment whatever we want. We are obviously part of it, and we are part of a life web, and we are not very good, neighbors in the way that we decimate other forms of life everywhere. The social domain, that basically provide the basic for social interaction. And finally, last but not least, the spiritual or value domain. All the others have to do with how you do things. That spiritual dimension has to do with why are you there in the first place? What is your goal, your value? What are you a steward, or are you a predator? And that's, it's interesting to mention that when I was working on the thing, I was still working with the World Bank at the time, and I was sharing this framework with colleagues, and everyone that I talked to said, don't even touch the world's spirituality if you want anyone in the business world or in government to take you seriously. And I would put it in and out depending on the audience until I realized that spiritual dimension is what holds everything together. That's the center of gravity. And of course, this is not a simple list. What is happening here is that the 5 domains and all their components interact and define each other. They are a system in its own right. And this is the reason why you cannot focus on one or the other if you are serious about sustainability or achieving that condition. You cannot deal only with technology. You cannot only deal with spirituality. You cannot only deal with that and the other, but you have to simultaneously, in every issue that you tackle, combine all of those together. And of course, for each domain, There is a principle that is defined. We won't have a time to go over those. That's the more abstract part of this conceptual framework here. And each principle has a whole number of policy and operational implication that become more familiar because they do with resource productivity, with using renewable sources and so forth and so on. So we gave the concept definition. I'd like you to think about another thing that is very important to understand because without it we are nowhere. Is sustainability a mere goal as it is regarded by most? We looked at it as an adjective or as something good to have. Witness the Millennium Sustainable Development, the United Nations Millennium Sustainability Goals. Everybody, of course, is jumping on that bandwagon now. Basically, you have a list there of 17 nice things to have. It's a wish list, a linear wish list without any understanding or without any hint about the payoff between them and how they interrelate and what are the limitations under which they can be achieved. So is it a mere goal? Now here, I have to introduce another idea which is very interesting. It came out of the cybernetic science. Winner, the father of cybernetics, and his colleagues published a paper in 1947 or so, which was very interesting. In that paper, they made the connection between the output of any system, its observable behavior, if you like, and its internal structure, saying that any behavior of any system is produced by a particular structure. The structure can be visible or not, but there is a structure that produced that behavior. Now that sounds very simple, but think about how many times when we try to change, try to reform something, we are focusing on the behavior, not on the internal structure. And if you want to change a behavior, you have to re-engineer the structure that produces it. Otherwise, you can do anything you want. You can have conferences, you can have discussions, you can have United Nations conventions. You're focusing here on the behavior, not on what produces. Think of climate change. The whole focus on the discussion and argument for the last over 25 years have been on levels of emissions, output of a system, not on what has to change in order to, which is, of course, getting out of fossil fuels. Completely different kind of concept. So what I'd like you to realize is that sustainability is a systems state. It's not a goal to be achieved. This is the system is what it does. And at the moment, the underlying structures of our current civilization produces that unstable state. And what are those structures? Those structures are, of course, all those things that we talked about earlier. They are the education system, the financial markets, the way industry, the whole productive system organized, the financial, I mentioned the financial, the industry, the governance, the mental model. All of those basic aspects are here producing a complete system, a whole, that is extremely resistant to change. Each one of those things is related to the others in the way that we learned about what happens in the system, and it's self-reinforcing. So the education system focuses on producing the kind of people that run the industry in the way that we know it, and so forth, how all of those interact. This is why it's such a difficult task to make the change that is required. This is the kind of system that has to be re-engineered in the way that we talked about a few minutes ago. And so change is of the essence, and what kind of change? The second order change, right? You cannot just think of the margin, which everybody's doing. We really need to bring about, it's a real revolution in the character of the system itself, so its behavior, its state, will give us what we want. So basically, the reordering of human affairs on the planet is a second order change that is required. You know, changes in all of the things, the values and and all of those kind of things. Why is this important to emphasize? Because it's not unusual if you deal with change aspect in any way, professionally or not. You'll realize that many second-order change situations are approached with first-order change strategies, like what I mentioned earlier about climate change. And this is why we are not bringing about the changes that we profess we'd like to see. And what is the objective of all of this? Of course, the objective is to foster a well-functioning alignment between individuals, society, the economy, and the regenerative capacity of the planet's life-supporting system. You have to think about it like a wheel cogs, kind of that harmonize on all these different levels, connect and harmonize on all these levels. So where we are today, we seem to be in that crossroad as society, as a world society, but also in every locality. And the two options are continuous deterioration on one side, or to establishing the concept of sustainability as the ordering principles in that place. The planet, the Canaries, La Palma, New York, whatever you want to think about. And certainly this is not the way we'd like the future to look. But this is the reality for too large a proportion of the human population on the planet today. So it's basically in our hands, but it is not enough to say it's our hand. It really requires, when you realize it, a historically unprecedented collaborative effort of the whole of humanity. And I wanted to give you next a sense of the application of those domains, the different domains, in one situation. So I picked up the project that I mentioned earlier, Project Wadi Atir. Basically, we tried to produce major radical innovation there in a number of dimensions, on the community dimensions, by, for example, dealing with gender issues that are very sensitive in that community, by creating a governance system that is different, basically focusing on a cooperative function, by having a number of other things that are by getting different tribes that rarely cooperate, work together, and so on. There is another, creating economic opportunities by really productive things that are based on Bedouin experience, but amplified with a new technology. So I have a great dairy function there, dealing with medicinal plant, producing a whole range of health services, a great deal of education. We are actually running an an agricultural school there on the site that before COVID saw about 1,000 pupils every week. And now it's coming back to that level. A whole integrated infrastructure of green technology that tried to showcase a waste to resource approach. And of course, a major restoration of the ecology itself that I'll emphasize in a minute. This is the site that we started with. This is a satellite picture in 2008. This is how basically it looked. This is how it is today. No need to mention anything. It's a place of a great deal of activity, and really the whole thing came to life in a big way. The project is now in the 17th year. In December, we had a big celebration, the 17th birthday, and it probably reflects an investment of about $20 million today, most of which came from philanthropy, from government, and other sources. Our experience in the Canaries, which of course is important to see. We've been involved here since almost 3 years now, 2.5 years for sure. We created that opportunity to collaborate with the universities of Las Palmas through the good office of Carmelo. And the first, a GSF session we did here in La Palma in the summer of 2023. It was really a remarkable session for everybody that was involved. We dealt, as you can see, with many, many people here. Everybody that was involved in one way or another with the sustainability issue were part of that endeavor. And it culminated in this report, Envisioning La Palma. What we tried to do is really look at where we are and project that vision that I mentioned earlier as a basis for design. So envisioning La Palma, and of course the focus was on the whole question of La Palma Sostenibile that we tried to also deal with. We also started another project that was very interesting together with TIDES, and basically was to do a whole system system dynamics modeling of the interplay between tourism and carrying capacity. And that model, of course, indicated the fallacy of thinking that more and more tourism, more and more income from tourism is what you want to have, and really came out with the important conclusion that you need to deal with responsible tourism. You have to mediate it. You have to really put emphasis on ecotourism, sustainable tourism, whichever you want to call it. And at the moment, we are trying to enlarge that scope of that also with TIDES and La Laguna University to try to expand that. We are looking for funding now to create a more robust model that will be used as a tool by government. So what next? What next? Well, while the planet shows increasing signs of stress as a result of ill-considered human activities, an exciting opportunity exists for the Canary archipelago to play a world-class role in advancing the sustainability agenda. This is really, I can't emphasize enough as an outsider that looks in, the huge opportunity that is here. And what is the opportunity? Basically to secure long-term economic prosperity that depends on a completely new, if you like, or renewed economic model. Remember that structuring that we talked about before, to ensure the long-term well-being of the island's community and its unique ecosystem, both people and the other forms of life, to showcase a model for sustainable development in island ecosystem everywhere in the world. This is very important. The issues that you are facing here are very typical to other archipelagos. It can be islands in the Mediterranean, it can be the Galapagos, it can be the Azores, the same issues of limited resources, over impact of tourism, and limited economic opportunities, migration, unstable population age balance, and so on. And of course, to create a groundswell of international support and release investment funds that would not be available otherwise. I think that if the Canaries could declare itself, we are declaring that we are going to become the first great global model for sustainable development in island ecology, there'll be a great deal of interest that you can't connect with today in terms of international support and, of course, funding sources that are not available for the day-to-day budgeting of the current governments or whatever is going on. So why the Canaries? I think I mentioned a little bit. It's a uniquely rich and varied ecosystem. You really have a treasure here that most people would like to have, but don't. That's why they're coming here. A unique brand and legendary history. There's so much mystery in the history of the Canaries, which is attractive in its own right and so forth. So there is something here in the tradition, in addition to that very rich ecosystem that is very attractive to attention. The sensitivity to the sustainability topics that is evident in this conference, but also we saw it during the GSF with everyone that we spoke to, world-class universities and research scientific institutions, the Biospheric Reserve, the Starlights things, and so forth. These are important places. So how to use all this incredible local talent in a way that reinforces what we're talking about. This idea of scale, it's conceptualized because it's kind of a quasi-closed system. It's as an ecology, as an ecosystem. It's conceptualized and handleable as a whole. It's not too complex. If you took the United States and say, I want to make the United States sustain, you will never get anywhere. But here there's a scale that is addressable. I think it's important that because it's relevant to many other island ecosystems. If we can produce a model here, it will be welcomed everywhere in other places around the world. And of course, it's not yet overdeveloped. Some areas are, but not the archipelago as a whole. So it's still an opportunity to guide the development in the right. So what would it entail? What you'll need to do in order to achieve that? I think you need an unambiguous commitment by government and everybody else. It's very often that people say, yeah, we'd like to do it, but they mean no, or they don't really put their effort into it. So an unambiguous commitment is very important. I think the holistic design approach, you cannot deal only with a part. That's the whole thing about system. You see, the key defining feature of a system is that it has properties that are not the properties of any one of its components. Therefore, you cannot deal with a component to get the whole. You can never, it's very interesting, because it's something that is attempted ever. You can never improve a system by focusing only on its part, because a system is never the sum of its parts. It's a product of their interactions, which is a completely different thing. You need a strong government support. I mean, you can, if the government of the Canary itself, and you had the president here earlier, commits to this and supports this, it's the absolute condition to bring that totality together. You have to anchor it in a special mechanism, organization, or something to carry it out. I don't think it can be carried out within an existing element, whether in a university or in government itself, because they are run by their own procedures and not by the questions of what needs to be done in order to achieve that end result. And of course, it requires a collaborative engagement of all the sectors, the community, the academia, the business sector, the governance, and every other stakeholder that you can hear. And so what would it look like? I'm almost done. What would it look like? And again, I'm looking at the 5 domains. Remember those 5 domains? On the level of the value proposition, which is the spiritual value domain, I start with this because this is really the most important, although it never is the driving concept when you talk about the things. On that level, you want to create a common vision in the islands and its community that is shared by of course, by the island and the government. And you want to anchor that common vision perhaps in something that we'll be able to call in the future the Canary's Pact, or the Canary's Agreement. The Pact is probably better. And that's a commitment of the Canary society to become a model, as we talked about earlier. Then you've got to develop a sustainable economic development, economic development strategy. Very important, because that is what will run the rest. The economic strategy for the future has to embody the sustainability principles, which will mean really an economic model that is driven by the sustainability principles, technology innovation that really drives in that direction, not in other direction. You can bring in new technologies because they're job producing or something else, but that's not the right incentive. Technology innovation, diversification of the economy, very, very important, especially in islands like La Palma, that is basically public sectors and tourism. Neglecting agriculture, neglecting little agricultural holding that actually produce the food and the food security, and so on. Diversification, very important. Responsible tourism, you cannot just have mass tourism overflowing that place. What will happen to water resources, many other issues, and so forth. Incidentally, the carrying capacity that may sound sometimes as a complex, it's very simple. You can compute how many water do I have to put in producing a kilo of bananas. How many water is consumed by a typical tourist? And are we having those resources looking forward? Do we want to spend those resources looking forward? So responsible tourism, innovative investment tools, very, very important. I think if we're serious about things, it will require some major infrastructure investments. And the typical banking, conventional banking world will not recognize still the value of natural resources or social human capital and so forth. So it's very important to begin to develop new tools. And there's a great movement in the financial world as well, although it's still far from being there, to create those things. and capacity building and professional training. I think you have to make sure that the capacity to make that system change is there. Still continue the infrastructure, the material domain, basically issues of water resources, energy independence, and a mixed alternative energies. The issues of waste management, super important here. Some of the things that we've seen are horrendous, actually, in what is happening there. The transportation, information technology, disaster resilience strategies, and so on. And the community on the personal well-being, governance, the kind of the social domain, if you like, a life-affirming wise governance, not just a bureaucracy that goes automatically. The community participation, super important. The community has to be part of this completely. The health and well-being, both of and lifestyle, the issues of demographic balance that I mentioned to earlier, education and sustainability, literacy, not literature, literacy. People have to understand what sustainability means in the way that I was trying to express today, and education reform to align the educational system with sustainability objectives. Finally, the ecosystem health, the life domain. I think the whole questions of conservation of marine and terrestrial ecosystems, the restoration of degraded rural areas that are, especially in some islands, are more than in others. The protection and enhancements of biodiversity is super important. There's so many issues that I can see from the press about the marine life in particular, the impact of boats and tourism on whales and other marine lives and so on. The sustainability design principles in urban planning, very, very important for the architectural world to internalize. And finally, the strengthening of the biospheric reserves. These are very important assets that you have here, and it's very important to make sure that they're not stressed for budgets and not unable to do what they need to do. And what are the obstacles for all of this? Of course, things like fragmentation, that is still typical to the case, of everybody doing one thing here, one thing there, one thing here, and other without really orchestrating the whole in a synergetic fashion. The business of usual mentality, that's what we always did thing here, so don't tell me to change. The unimaginative bureaucracy that just acts automatically on its familiar regulations. The entrenched interests always will be a major, there can be economic interest or any other. And of course, the idea that this is too complex, it's too difficult, it's too impossible, which you will hear everything that you're trying to bring change. So I want to end this presentation with that picture of our familiar duck from before. Why? This duck has become for me the symbol for Project Quality. When we started talking, like we are doing now, about the Canary sustainability, when we talking about the project, everyone that we try to get support, to get help, to get interest, it's impossible, it will never happen, it's a utopian, it's too complex, it's too difficult, forget it, duck attack. It's as impossible as a duck swimming every winter in those rain-fed pools of water. Thank you very much. How was our time? Okay?
Yes,
Good.
that's okay.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Michael Benelli. Decidimos que extendíamos el tiempo de la presentación para que
We've gone a little bit over time,
y como vamos a tener tiempo de
and because we will have an opportunity to talk to each other during the coffee break,
personalmente
we would like to ask you to direct your questions to Michael in person later on in the break. It was a wonderful opportunity we've just had to hear his perspective on the challenges faced by the Canary Islands. Thank you.
To speak with the rest of the people at any moment today or tomorrow, and we'll continue with the next presentation. Thank you.